Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's edition of HR Mentorship Learning Series. Tonight, we'll be doing a book review, and the book review is by Olamma Ijoma, and the book title is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Oluyemi Adeosho. Olamma is a regular facilitator or speaker on this platform, and we're always excited to see her. All the same, I would still like to read her profile, just in case one or two people may just be getting to know her or get in contact with her through this platform. Olamma is an accomplished human resource professional with over a decade of experience spanning the FMCG, telecommunication, and consulting businesses. She currently leads as the head of learning and talent development at SPAR Nigeria, where she drives strategic initiatives focused on organizational growth and talent empowerment. Olamma is also the co-founder of Landmark ICT Services and serves as an HR advisor to JVT Enterprise, a startup tech firm offering expert guidance on people strategy and development. In addition to this, our core areas of expertise include strategic HR planning, talent management, career advisory, mentorship, operations optimization, and so on and so forth. Olamma is passionate about mentoring young professionals and helping them align their career paths with their aspirations. She holds a Bachelor's of Education in English language from the first and the best University of Ibadan, and also an MBA in International Human Resource Management from Rome Business School. She is an associate of the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria. She's known for her strong problem-solving skills, stakeholder management, collaboration, and commitment to continuous learning. Outside of work, she loves to sing, write poetry, and network. She's happily married with 2 children. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking to us today, reviewing the book, Highly Effective People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I present to us Olamma Ijoma. You have the floor, my sister.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oluyemi Adeosho, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here, sir, once again. And we see all you do for the HR community. We are grateful to you. And happy new month to us all, and for everyone who have mapped out time to be here out of your restful Sunday evening. I say thank you for being here. It would be nice for us to know where you all are joining in from. You can drop it in the chat room, chat box, your name and where you're joining from. I would also like to know as well how many of us on this call have attempted to read the book, or for some reason you've come across the book, you have some ideas. I want to be able to find out who are going to be more like my co-reviewers this evening. More so you could drop your charts, your comments, and also your questions we will take at the end of this session. It's going to be very practical and interactive. The first time I attempted to read this book sometime last year, the main book itself, it's over 300 pages. And for me, when I read books, I tend to like to practicalize it from the point I start reading it. And so what helped me eventually was that somehow I was gifted the summary copy of the book. That was what enabled me read it, get through to it faster and be able to come out with a profound summary. And hence I decided to come on this platform to share my knowledge of what it is I have understood from reviewing the book. And I would also like to employ each and every one of us. Oh, wow. It wasn't easy for me because sometimes it scares me to read. When I just get a book, the moment I see the number of pages, I become a bit frightened, but the summary version has helped me. This is what the summary version looks like. I was gifted the summary version at the beginning this year, but I want to employ each and every one of us on this call today. The book is a must-have, it's a must-read. Whatever time we're going to spend here within 45 minutes to 1 hour, trust me, it's not going to do 100% justice to this book. So besides the engagement and everything we're going to learn on this call this evening, it will be nice for us to go and read the book. All right, so yes, please. I believe you can see my slides moving now. I'm on the content page. So what Stephen has been, what Stephen has been able to do in this book that has been very profound is the fact that he tried to ensure that he brings to life a lot of the analysis he employed in this book. That's why from the content you see is divided into 4 parts. And for each part of it, there was so much practicality that he used around this book. So for the first part, which is part 1 and 2, he called it the private victory, which is something that he mentioned and analyzed that we are able to conquer in our inside before we're able to interact with people around the world. And I would also like to highlight the fact that what Stephen also ensured that in his, when he wrote this book, he made reference to the little bits of our individual life, whether there are things we understand consciously or unconsciously, to come up with the book itself. Thereby, we may have ignored understanding how much of our value system we put into building our character and our habits. For something as simple as having an excellent spirit, which someone can easily say is a value system of an individual. If you are not conscious of it, if you are not consistent of that as a character, then you miss out on what Stephen analyzed here as being highly effective, a highly effective person. As he mentioned here, where Aristotle wrote, we are repeatedly reflection of what we do, right? It's not just an act, but a habit. So when our character puts together, whether we become conscious of it or unconscious of it, expression and they produce our effectiveness or ineffectiveness. So you can name it. It could be as small as procrastination. It could be as small as selfishness. It could be as small as impatience. But from all those little habits that make up our everyday life, we seem to have ignored somewhat. They are what Stephen put together in his book he wrote down to be able to enable us understand what it is we're looking forward to. So now, as a bit of introduction, what a habit is being explained here is the intersection of knowledge, skills, and desire. For us, a lot of times, our background, our experiences put together, they make up our habits. So for a lot of people that grow up in, different part of the world with different kind of value system, whether it's the value system of how your parents used to think in, the previous ages compared to what it is now, we somehow unconsciously have formed all of that as a habit. So right here in this intersection, we say that Stephen says that knowledge, skill, and desire all put together forms what we have as our habits. And in order for us to understand that deeply, the 7 habits, it provides like an integrated approach to the development of our personal and interpersonal effectiveness, thereby moving us into the majority skill. For a lot of us, I believe on this call, are professionals, and if we don't take it to heart, we may think to believe that analyzing this book, especially with the name as it shows, may be only useful for people at the entry stages of their life, whether you're starting out your career or you're starting out your life generally. But what we miss out knowing and understanding is that there would always be need for us to take a pause and look back and reiterate, asking ourselves, What are those habits I have developed over time that is not necessarily positive that I need to work on? What are those skills that I have not learned that I need to learn? Even the ones I have learned that are not necessarily for my growth and development, probably I need to unlearn and relearn. What are those desires that I've developed over time that is not going to shape me positively to become who it is I want to become? So all of these things is what moves us to a maturity scale, with our mindset opening to that in-depth of understanding. So that's why we have 3 levels of maturity scale here, where he mentioned dependence, independence, and of course, interdependence. Anybody would think that for someone who is dependent could be I expect example of our children, those of us parents on this call, saying, you take care of me, I blame you. I blame the results on you. But what we are not realizing here, even within our workspace, how well are we dependent on whether we leave the responsibilities to our supervisors, our line managers, heads of department, business leaders, as the case may be? How well are you taking responsibility for those things that are put in your care? Are you just saying, I'm a regular HR intern or a HR officer, there's not so much expected of me, because I believe there are most of us on this call are HR practitioners. I'm using that analogy, but are you able to take control or take charge of those things that are put within your own space, within your care, within your responsibility? So that is how well it is important for us to think, understand, and analyze the dependency bracket. Same way we move from there to being independent, that states clearly, I can do it, I am responsible, I am self-reliant, you're taking full responsibility. We go down to say what's being interdependent, that we have alignment, collaboration, synergy, cohesion. We can combine our talents, our abilities to create something. So this is more like how Stephen was able to analyze what he made reference to as a habit. So in forming those tiny habits, how is this intersection working for each and every one of us? So this review seems to be some sort of wake-up call for us to look through and, recharge on what it is we think that we're doing, that we need to do differently, and how best we also need to do those things as well. Now, under this private victory, which is the part 1, we have the first habit as being proactive, right? The real question is, what do we understand? What does it mean to us as proactive? What does being proactive mean to us? They may mean different things to us. Perfect examples could be very similar cases of everything that is happening in Nigerian setting right now. I just want to use example of something that we can easily relate with. We've had so much happen within a short period of time. In the last 6 months to 1 year, or even 2 years down the line, there have been hiking prices of petrol, there have been hiking prices of transportation, foodstuff, name it, right? They are endless. And it may seem to be that we are reacting to what this hike has been over the years. But many of us may see our position now as being a proactive step. But the truth of the matter is that it's actually the other way around. And I'll give you a perfect example. For expenses we make on feeding, for instance, because today we understand that there is no guarantee that in the next 1-2 months, or even a week time, let me not even go too far, that the prices of some kind of foodstuff may remain the same. We tend to stretch ourselves to plan more, right? We plan further, and we are looking towards, okay, instead of stocking for just 1 month, I will want to plan to stock for 6 months, or to stock for 1 whole year. Thereby, you are saving that money which you would have spent. But the truth of the matter is, somehow, because of the economic situation in Nigeria right now, we seem to be reactive, not necessarily proactive. A proactive measure would have been thinking in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I'll give you another perfect example. A young man reached out to my husband yesterday who used to drive Uber. And it was very lucrative when it started. Uber started out maybe 10 to 12 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. Now, anybody who was in that business that time, we have definitely cashed out, right? Whether or not they were driving their own personal vehicles or they were driving someone's vehicle, the prices were fair. You know, there was a lot of money that came as a result of that. But today, we have so many others. Besides Uber, there's InDrive, you have Bolt, and the business is not as lucrative as it used to be before. So the young man right now is out of a job because he used to drive someone else's car, and he did not think of a long-term sustainability plan. Similarly, the way the yellow taxis drivers didn't realize that Uber and Bolt and all the others will come to take over their own source of livelihood in terms of the transportation system. And that is changing a lot, right? In the midst of so much happening, there is just so much change. And some of all these changes are happening because people are thinking, because human beings are being proactive. So that's why it says here that it's not in the ordinary, it's in the ordinary events of every day that we develop like the proactive capacity to handle extraordinary pressure. So we don't necessarily have to wait till something becomes a form of, putting pressure under us, or it gets to the point where, it's intense before we set out proactive measure. Another perfect example would be saying something like in Lagos, there was traffic somewhere, and that's why you didn't arrive a certain location on time. I mean, traffic is not breaking news in Lagos. We all know that because we are used to seeing traffic in most areas in Lagos. The thing that would actually be breaking news would be when there is no traffic. It would even amaze us, for which those things happen maybe on a weekend, maybe the weekends that we don't have any major events in Lagos, when it's not the Experience, for instance, or any NSPPD show, any of this, or a major show that happened in Lagos, for instance, that could cause traffic for a Saturday, even running through a Sunday morning. We all understand all of that. So when you want to take proactive steps and you have to go to all the way to Lekki to commute to work, for instance, you have to leave your house in good time if you're staying on the mainland, or if you're living somewhere in Ogun State, maybe far away in Mowe. All of those things in your mindset, in your thinking, they are proactive steps and measures you need to take. It over time forms your behavior, and it's a part of our decision, like this slide says, and it shouldn't be because of the condition, because that helps to shaping our mindset and how we think eventually. So here we look at what are the different steps you need to take in order for you to run on the proactive plane. The first one here is taking the initiative, doing whatever it takes to necessarily solve a problem, achieve a goal, while you remain through to correct principles. So in emphasizing this bit, many a times when we take a reactive approach instead of proactive, we tend to skip processes, and that puts us on a negative plane, right? Because we are now in a hurry, we're under pressure. We want to skip, following due process, because we are not proactive. We're only reacting to the situation. So that's why Stephen here says, take initiatives, think it all out, put all the cards on the table and say, in order for me to achieve A, B, C, D, I need to make steps to solve a problem, to reach a goal. Thereby, I will have to follow through to this process and that process and that process. Again, most of all of this, it could be very tiny aspects of our life that we may tend to ignore. But when we speak about the 7 habits of highly effective people as portrayed in the book, these are the simple steps that you necessarily need to take in order to help you thrive. The next is act or be acted upon. Each of the 7 habits, they require you to develop a proactive muscle that gives you a responsibility to act. If not, you'll be acted upon. Similar to the last reference I just made. How best are you thinking forward? How well are you thinking with the end in mind, which is the second habit, by the way? Are you able to look ahead to say, I want to be able to project before the situation arises. I want to be able to plan ahead. I want to be able to make provision for something before the need comes. It's just like saying you cannot possibly arrive at an interview late, especially when you have been given the exact time you should arrive there for the interview or your embassy appointment. All of those things are proactive steps we need to take. But many a times for us as individuals, we choose to take those proactive steps because they have been like procedures, right? The processes that have been set down to say, oh, if you don't do this, there are penalties for it. Imagine missing your flights if you have to have an early morning flight to catch to a neighboring state or even out of the country. You know what that will amount to. So that is in our subconscious seems to be the only reason we tend to want to take proactive steps. But Stephen is saying to us that for you to be effective, as a person, as an individual, take cognizance of these steps. And the final one here is, what would you rather take charge of? Would it be your circle of concern or your circle of interest? We all have circles of concern. That is normal. There are definitely challenges, issues where we as individuals could bring to our workplace, for instance, as career people, as entrepreneurs, as business leaders. We would definitely have concerns, but are you willing to be in that box of looking at your concerns when you know you are not able to do anything about it? Or would you rather look towards your circle of influence? And it shares here that proactive people, they focus on their circle of influence. They work on things that they can do something about. So in talking about our circle of influence, they are mostly the relationship that helps build us into different forms. And in also this analogy of the habits of highly effective people, we are not working on our own, right? We work in collaboration with people at different levels. So thereby, you would necessarily see that for your value system, who are those people that are aligning with your value? Who are those people that are going to the same place you're going? Who are those people that, you know, you want to go far with? Identify those people and begin to align them under your circle of influence. Now, for the second habit here, we have beginning with the end in mind. Remember, the first habit is being proactive. These two habits exist mainly at the level of our mind. So it has a lot to do with our mindset. And trust you me, one thing I have realized over time in my work, in my journey of life is having an open mind, having a creative mind is what sets you apart for success, right? It sets you apart strongly to become excellent because you need to have an open mind in order for you to see possibilities in things that maybe at the surface level, they may not seem possible. And for this second habit, it shares on the fact that two things are created twice, right? There's the mental creation, which is the first creation, and the physical creation. For most of the things we see around us in the world today are things that existed first in the mind of an individual. Name it. The example I gave as from the Uber app existed in the mind of an individual before it came to life. The vehicles existed in the mind of someone before they started making vehicles, and we have them all over on the roads now. The same way with aircraft, helicopters, the sea, right? The jets, name it, the boats, the motorbikes, the tricycles, they all existed in the mind of somebody before they came to light. So, but the importance is that once we understand these principles, it helps us enlarge our circle of influence. Then we know who are going to where it is we're going to. Similarly, having a personal mission statement enables us focus on what we want. What's your character? And how well do you want to contribute towards a good cause? When you wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, what is your end goal? Why are you waking up at 5 a.m.? What do you intend to achieve? Because before you realize what is happening, you remain on that path for the longest. It could be something you may be doing unconsciously without realizing it for the next 5 years, 10 years, but you must have a plan. Why would you always want to commute to a job on the island? Are you able to sustain that mindset? Is it something that the values around that kind of career you're building for yourself is where you intend to see yourself 10 years or 15 years down the line? So these are conversations you need to have with yourself personally. Remember, we're still within the bracket of the private victory, and under that private victory, we are moving from a level of dependence to independence, where you are thinking more for yourself before the next level. And for the third habit here, it is more of materializing, bringing to light what you have conceptualized in the first and the second habit. Remember, first habit is being proactive. Habit 2 is thinking with the end in mind. Now, habit 3, putting first things first. How do you put first things first? It highlights here the power of an independent will. The exercise of independence, it works towards being principle-centric, being disciplined in your thinking. I mean, some of us may just necessarily think that on this call, this conversation we're having is too much of theory, and it may not be practical in real life. But the truth of the matter is, when you become conscious of your life, when you make up your mind to who you want to become, when you make up your mind to the things it is you want to do for yourself, short-term and long-term, all of this begins to make sense. All of this begins to matter to you. And it's okay. I can understand that a lot of people have not developed themselves to that level. In my organization, some 2-3 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to conduct an orientation session for about 17 youth corporates that resumed in the firm, that were posted to different branches. And one of the major questions I asked them, besides knowing what they studied, they all studied fantastic courses: mass communication, computer science, several of them. Not all of them understood what it is they wanted to do long-term. Not all of them had been properly guided and canceled on the path they need to toe next. Most of them wanted to do or want to do at this time is, let me just get a job. Let me just start something. Let me just start earning some money, right? And I was a bit worried, because I realized that what this is only going to do is, it's a short-term satisfaction it will give. It doesn't have any long-term effect. So within that period and the conversation we had, I started, educating them to let them understand that you need to start from now to be able to make plan for your life, to be able to think through, what is that thing I want to do long term? And that will feed into every of your personal experiences. For me personally, most of the experiences I've had from days of school up until youth service, even before I got my first job, the experiences that have been that tied to what I even do currently. My first career path was built in customer experience, before I moved to HR, learning and development. And so a lot of all those experiences has enabled me to understand how to guide someone who is required in an organization, for instance, to do well in customer experience. So there's always a part. It's always a flow. One thing would always lead to another, as long as it's something you have worked on in your mind and thought about critically. So another thing Stephen also tried to do here with talking about putting first things first, he made mention of the fact that the different generations are handling time management differently. For the first generations, they used to do more like notes, taking notes, using checklists to give like timings to things it is they want to do. Second generations also, they worked with calendars, appointments, which is similar to what we do, even though we are in the third generation. For us in the third generation, we are prioritizing more of clarifying our values. He made mention of this, looking through a time metrics analogy, which we have here. A lot of us are used to this time metrics analogy, and the fact that we all want to know, how do the things we do align with our goals and our value system? But for the fourth generation, which he mentioned is emerging right now, we recognize that for time management, the challenge will not necessarily be to manage time. The challenge will be for us to manage ourselves. And I'll explain. So in this bit of this time metrics, as demonstrated here in this buckets, I put them together. We have this as a framework or a template that we use to understand how we put first things first. But I'll also want to give us a perfect example. So looking at this under the part where you have things that are urgent and not important, waste, for instance. Now, for an individual who has a health challenge and it is required for him or her to get excessive relaxation, which is rest, for that person to recover and get back to their feet, that part of waste becomes urgent and important and stays under the category of a necessity. Because if they are not okay, then they are not able to function well to help them with doing things which are urgent and important. So automatically, it converts from being not urgent and not important to being urgent and important. So we see how this can change, with time. So while this is a framework and a template for people to look at and use for their time metrics, this changes. If you have someone who is going through a mental breakdown, many a times, again, excessive relaxation would be relevant. Some form of distraction becomes something that is important for them to do in order to get back on their feet. So what is your first thing first? That's a big question we all need to answer. In your scale of preference, in your category of analyzing things, in how you program your life, in how you program your schedule, in how you walk through your calendar. So, besides blocking calendars for meetings in the office, we should also have calendars for our individual daily activities to plan our life. How are you putting your first things first? That's a very important thing to know, because your time is your life, right? It is the time that amounts to, today is the 6 months, the first day of the 6 months of this year. I remember January like yesterday, right? So we're already in June and it looks like the year is running so fast. Before we know what is happening, we'll be in December 2025. How are you categorizing your time management? How are you putting first things first? So these are questions we necessarily need to ask ourselves at every stage of our life to enable us know where we are per time, what we should be doing at that point in time, how we should channel our mindset and re-strategize if need be to enable us scale up, whether we are losing out in some aspect of our life and we need to change our routes in case we are able to highlight and identify that. So that's another bit of habit 3 that Stephen helped us look through and understand. So now, having understood that part of our private victory, then he made an introduction to what we call the public victory, which is like transiting us into the phase of being interdependent. That's what he called the paradigms of interdependency. So for this part of it, his introduction explains clearly that we need strong emotional connections in the kind of relationship we build. Here, he made reference to what we call emotional bank account. The first time I heard about that was sometime I attended a leadership training sometime in 2016. I got to understand what emotional bank account means. And the powerful metaphor to describe the relationship in an interdependent way is what we call the emotional bank account, which is the trust you build in a relationship, having the feeling of safeness you have with another human being. So it could be anybody, right? It could be, I mean, again, this also is highlighted within your circle of influence. If you remember when I talked about it, building emotional bank account, you would always have need to rely on people. But for what is worth, interdependency means you have one person who is independent and the other person who is independent. For the coming together of two independent people, that's how strong interdependency work. But in order for you to achieve that and arrive at that strongly, you need to find a way to invest in those people that you have identified within your circle of influence in their emotional bank account. And it could be very simple things, right? It could be ensuring you are there for them at different points in time. You check up on them, you make time to go the extra mile to be reliable, right? You give grace when need be to them. You are patient. So all of these things also strengthens our own value system when we begin to understand how it is you're making deposits into someone's emotional bank account, because there will be need for you to make withdrawals at some point. We're all human beings, right? You would not always be 10 over 10. You will not always be in a perfect situation. You will not always be in a good shape. There will definitely be need for you to feel rely on somebody, to require something from someone. It can be anything. It can just be for them to listen to you. You're probably having a bad day. All you just want from them is for them to listen to you and understand what is going on and empathize with you. It can be as small as that. So I see a lot of us as HR professionals within this space. And as much as Stephen Covey represented a leader while he wrote this book, it's also important for us to see that building this virtue, building these attributes of being highly effective is one thing that is going to put us on that level of strong leadership and being effective as a leader at different levels, right? So the next point where we are at for the fourth habit, having moved to the public victory, is thinking win-win. In order for you to think win-win, you must definitely be operating at the level of interdependency. There's no two ways about it. It's not something that you just move from habit 1 to habit 4 without going through. So they all work in sync, right? And there's some form of progression that happens. If you have not conquered the things that happen within the private victory, you will definitely not be able to win in the space of public victory. I kid you not. So under this fourth habit, thinking win-win. For the first bucket here, it explains that the 3 character traits essential for win-win paradigm is integrity, maturity, and abundance mentality. It doesn't come easy, right? A lot of people need some form of training and growing and developing themselves to think of abundance mentality, because it means that everybody is going to have something for themselves. That's how abundance mentality works. And all of those would only happen if you have integrity and if you have grown and matured yourself to a certain level. So you see, in all of this, there's some level of growth that happens. It's not automatic. And it's okay if we identify that we may not all have gone to this level. It's okay. But what are you doing about it? For the second bracket here, it says in the win-win agreement, the following 5 elements are important. Desired result. What do you want to achieve at the end of the day? Remember, when we talked about being proactive, for the first habit, second habit, thinking with the end in mind, and the third habit, first things first. This is another level. What is the result you want to achieve? What are the guidelines, the principles and policies you want to take through that path to achieve those results? What are the resources required? So this agreement forms like a very important part of what we should all see and analyze in our professions, especially as human resource practitioners, where you have our performance that comes into play. This bit is going to help us derive and understand that as HR business partners working in an organization, what is the end goal? A lot of business leaders accuse HR of not being strategic, right? And I'm happy to know that we are moving out of that traditional word to become a lot more transformational and strategic. But to play in the space of strategic HR, this second bit is what would help us a great deal, right? Desired result, guidelines, resources, accountability, and of course the consequences. When as an individual, you have understood this for yourself personally, then in your career and building your career, as well as whichever organization you find yourself, this can be easily broken down for you to learn as well. And so for the next step, in order to get a win-win solution, we also have this as a breakdown. For a lot of us in our organization, some of these processes and steps, especially for this third one, we use it in a disciplinary committee, meeting, for instance, when you understand give the person fair hearing, you know what the issue is and the people involved, you determine what the result that would help, all of those things, identify the possible new option to achieve those results. So in a win-win approach, in a win-win possibility, these are required habits for you to possess and have. Again, remember, you cannot skip any of these habits to move on to the next one. You will definitely find a gap in your own path. That is what Stephen has been able to educate us in his book. Now, for the next bit, on the fifth habit, it says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. A lot of us, so I'll tell you clearly, right? I'm owning or being vulnerable here. I am as well guilty of this fifth habit, and I believe as well as many of us, most times we don't listen to understand. We listen because we want to reply. And for me personally, I do it a lot with my children because you just feel like you know what it is they want to say. But a lot of times, so HRs are victims of this. A lot, right? You can say that again. we are super victims of this. A lot of times, you forget that they have a right to fair hearing. You always want to jump into conclusion before you even understand what the situation is. So please, Stephen is charging us in his book as a fifth habit to be highly effective. Yeah, but most people don't want to understand us also. So there must be a balance. That's the truth, right? Stephen is telling us in the fifth habit, for you to be able to conquer, in order to be highly effective, you must seek first to understand, then to be understood. It's like a principle that, you know, it's unwritten, it's unspoken, but it has great effect, I must tell you, because yes, although it's risky and hard to first understand, yes, it's risky, and he acknowledged it here in his comment. It is the mark of all three professionals. So you see here, it's not my words, it's Stephen's word. He said it clearly that the mark of every true professional. So if you're identifying this evening on this as a professional, know that it is important for you to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And the next bit, he said, as we learn to listen deeply to other people, we will discover tremendous difference in perspective. Yes, I align with that strongly, because I have also identified that in so many ways. Because when you think you already know what it is they want to say, you know what it is they want to answer, the response they want to give, sometimes when you're patient to be able to listen to them, you realize that, oh, you may not have seen it from different perspectives. This is a different dimension. This is a different way they're approaching this thing, which is not something you thought about because we're unique, right? In our personality, we were created differently. We were created dynamic. And so people have different ways they bring creativity and uniqueness to things. So when you understand those parts in people, it just helps you appreciate the impact those differences can make as people try to work together in an interdependent situation. So this has also happened to me a lot. That way you're giving room for more grace. And it takes a lot. I mean, I will acknowledge it again. It takes a lot, but remember, when we spoke about the fourth habits in win-win, remember we said that you must have an abundance mentality. So when you're giving grace for people to share a different perspective, it means that you have an abundance mentality. Yeah, being a good listener, it's a virtue. Honestly, it's not easy to come by, I must say that clearly, but it's a virtue. But again, he also mentioned here that in business, so this is speaking mostly to entrepreneurs and business leaders, make the human element as important as the financial or technical. When we listen, we learn. Right. So speaking to business leaders, heads of department, line managers, supervisors, let's not just think about, you know what, the humans or the individuals, they are just here to do the job. Let them get the job done. Are you engaging them? Are you listening to them? Are you getting their perspective? Are you enabling them to be creative in the job you are giving them to do? Are you providing emotional and psychological safety for them to try, for them to be heard and for them to share their own views? So it's very, very important because guess what? The humans are one of the major factors that enable us thrive in whatever it is we do, as Stephen has also highlighted strongly in his book. So I'm employing each and every one of us to do better in this bit in order for us to walk around what he mentioned here as the fifth habit. Then the next one, which is the sixth habit, he talks about synergy. And what do we know and understand as synergy? It's the power of collaboration. Some leaders tend to only listen when there's a problem. Yeah, I know, right? Already I'm not listening before getting to it. It's a lot, Stella, and we have a long way to go. I'll never lie. We have a long way to go because the truth of the matter is that when we pause and not do something about what the gap we have identified, we have a longer way to go. But once we have identified, just like we're having this conversation on this call, then we know that, okay, we have identified the problem, the solution is at hand. So it is important that more people come to the knowledge, come to the understanding that, okay, there's some form of solution that is required and we need to see insight. That way, it will be a lot easier when more people are aware of what the challenge is before we're able to find easier ways to address the challenges. Talking about synergy and synergizing, the power of collaboration. At the beginning of this year, I mean, I was in a session where one of our mentors mentioned to us there that in order for us to thrive in these hard times, especially with the economic situation we have in Nigeria and even beyond Nigeria, right, Africa and globally, understanding the power of collaboration, the power of synergy is going to enable us thrive strongly. And that alone has opened my mind up and even further. And I'm sure a lot of us here understand what synergy does to different bits and different aspects of life. So when you're thinking about win-win, when you're thinking about private victory on relationship that has to do with interdependence, there's no way you can skip out understanding synergy, having empathic communication, even when it's tough. I mean, high level of emotional intelligence comes to play when you're thinking about this part of it. It's not easy. It's really not easy, guys. I understand when we are not in our perfect state, when we tend to react to things in our most vulnerable states. that regardless, right? It just means that we are still humans, but taking it out of our subconscious and be conscious of it, oftentimes it helps us, stay at the higher level. And that's what Stephen is trying to explain when he talked about this in his book, being conscious about all of these attributes and more. And so he had this graph also in his book, talking about the levels of communication. When you are always on the defensive level, it keeps you at the beat of win-lose or lose-lose. So that way, cooperation is low and also trust is low. So for the next level, which is more like the middle level, you're only doing what you call respect, compromise. Cooperation is and trust is average, not necessarily low. And so for a perfect example of an employee who has both trust and cooperation low, most likely from his line manager, supervisor, or head of department, they will just be barely existing in that organization. And that bit, it shows the gap in lack of engagement, right? Lack of interpersonal relationship for that individual, for that employee, which is an example I'm trying to cite here. But for synergy, that's where you have people high in trust and people high in cooperation, whereby you are able to go through an approach of a win-win situation. At the end of the day, everybody wants to make progress. The performance and the productivity of individuals collectively. So where you also have synergy in the win-win situation is teamwork. How, as much as teamwork is a very important part of our roles in organization as a major soft skill, beside interpersonal relationship and communication, some of us still don't see it as a win-win situation because we seem to remain in that bucket of being on our own. We only want to be independent. We only want to see our own personal and individual victories, not realizing that the victory of one person is the victory of all. Somehow we're still missing out on harnessing that bit, all of that. So in looking through of this level of communication, I came up with a very powerful example, which is the most trending song today in Nigeria. And I believe it has gone beyond the shores of Nigeria into the global space. What would we think that would have happened? I'm sure we have several other examples similar to this, but I just decided to make reference to this as the most recent trending song we have that is playing back to back on every social media platform as you have it. Gaze Baba did this song 9 months ago. And here we have the views of 1.2 million. In fact, it was 1.1 when I checked yesterday. So we had an additional 1 million. Today, similarly, the remix that he did with Lawrence. So what would we think would have happened? The power of synergy, the power of collaboration. Nothing changed. I mean, I've listened to both songs, right? There was no much of difference from the initial one. Yes, Lawrence brought his expertise. He brought some form of skill. He brought his individual self. That is what we call interdependence to this song. The power, yes, the power of collaboration. And we saw the difference it made. It's so amazing. I mean, how best can we explain this as the power of synergy? And beyond this, there's so many other examples. And guess what? The number of subscribers he hasn't changed. I mean, when I checked this out earlier this afternoon, but the engagements are more. Why? Because they were able to identify that even though they are strong as being independent people, there was need for them to come together and come up with this, as we see it now, national anthem. It's playing all over. Everybody uses it to make content, videos, and what have you. So I found it very interesting. I also decided to, put it to us to know and see how much of strength goes into collaboration, which is a sixth habit Stephen has also mentioned here in his book. And to talk of the renewal, which is the fourth part, is where you have the seventh habit. And what is the seventh habit? Sharpening the saw. How best are we able to sharpen the saw? It's more like aligning all of the different habits put together from the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and putting them together. So where we have that, we are the instrument of our own performance. And to be effective, we need to recognize the importance of taking out time regularly to sharpen our saws in these four different ways. The physical dimension. How are we able to care effectively for our own body, right? Everything, again, exists first at the level of our mind. Before we bring to reality what it is that goes on in our mind, are we taking care of the mind? What do we take in every day? What are those things? What are we watching? What are we listening to? Who are we interacting with? How are we taking care of our body? So in taking care of our body, it talks about both physically, right, and mentally. Because whatever it is that happened to you at the level of your mind, it comes to play in your body, reacts in your body. So you may not be necessarily ill, down with a malaria or any medical ailment, but it may just be as a result of frequently taking in things that are not important to our body, which is everything up in harnessing all of the 6 habits we have looked at. The second part is the spiritual dimension. What is your core? What is your value system? What is your essence? Are you committed to your true values? If you say one of your values is excellence, what are the steps that you are taking towards having an excellent spirit? What are the steps you are taking towards being a person of excellence? It's not, when we talk about excellence, we don't necessarily mean perfection. We just mean walking step by step towards the part where you are doing things that is helping you grow. How best are you aligning and making reference to all of those different value systems which helps you in life? That's section talks about the spiritual dimension. The mental dimension, it talks about your study and your discipline. Over the last couple of years, within the last 3 to 4 years, I would say, I have taken learning very strongly, like I have never done before in my life. I don't take for granted any opportunity I have to read a book, especially a book that is going to impact in my life positively. I don't take for granted any opportunity I have to be within a circle of influence, be around people, attend conferences, attend webinars, attend seminars that is going to impact on me positively. So what is that discipline that we are putting in that goes into our head? Remember, it is those things that goes into our head, goes into our mind, that is also going to transform us. That is, what he talked about when he said sharpening the sword. How are we ensuring that the mental dimension is being taken care of? And finally, the social/emotional dimension, which centers around the principle of interpersonal leadership and empathic communication. So he mentioned that when he talked about the 6th habit, and of course the 4th habit also. So the social and mental dimension being centered around your leadership, which is one of the basic things Stephen was trying to arrive at when he wrote the book, of saying that these 7 different habits is able to enable you become effective, first as an individual, second, even though as an individual, to be able to influence your community, third, whether or not you're a career person or a business leader, you also are required to share the same kind of value system. Because when people see you and when people hear you speak, they unconsciously look out for some of these habits, whether they have known you previously or they are just getting to meet you for the first time. how all of these habits align together to form something really strong. Maybe we don't always know it, but Stephen has been able to come in and put them together in this book to help us practicalize it and bring strongly to life what the meaning and the essence of it in reality. Okay, so in summary, a life of integrity is the most fundamental source of our personal worth. So our peace of mind comes where we have harmony with true principles and values like no other way. There is a security that comes with being authentic, being creative, and cooperatively interact with other people, and the experience that helps us with our interdependent habit. We all need to be conscious of the power of interdependency. So that's where he ends analyzing the strength of his book in. When we understand the power of interdependency, it makes a huge difference in our life. We become successful first in our mind before we become successful in real life. And the most important level of success is for you to conquer the mind before you are able to conquer what happens in the physical. And so to that, we have come to the end of this summary of the book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Wow. Very, very engaging, interesting, and also very enlightening. Thank you so much, Olama, for yet another profound, insightful session from a book review. Ladies and gentlemen, in the next few minutes, we would like to take your comments, contributions. Perhaps you want to share a real-life example or HR example where you applied any of the 7 habits. You are also welcome. Or you have any questions around any of the seven habits, all you need to do is just please raise your hands, and then we give you permission to make your contributions or ask your questions as the case may be. Also, if you prefer to type your questions or comments, we are checking right away. Of course, we can see a lot of accolades, encomiums, can see people clapping, celebrating, and appreciating our speaker, our facilitator, our reviewer, our book discussant for today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Just checking again to see if any hands, virtual hands are up. If you raise your hands physically, I won't be able to see it. I don't have that capacity yet. All right. So just trying to. Oh,
Yes, we have a hand, Uncle K.
yes. It's okay. You have the floor.
All right, thank you so much for this very insightful, very powerful presentation. I don't know, I just have to assent to it and agree with you that this is a very powerful book. It's something that I came across when I was still very young in my HR days. And truly, I must confess, this book actually gave me that mindset to be where I am today. It was very powerful. I was always listening to the audio book then, in the words of Stephen R. Covey himself. And, that gave me some sort of paradigm shift. So it's not really a question I have, but just to agree with you, corroborate with you, and really attest to it that this is a really powerful book. It can really change, one's mindset if you follow the rules
Hello, good
therein
evening.
in the book. Okay,
How are you?
so it's really powerful, and I urge everyone to also, practice all these rules. It's fantastic. Thank you for this presentation, Uloma. Thank you so much, Ijoma.
Thank you so much, Uncle K, for that submission and your contribution. Well received. It's good to know that at least we have someone on the call who have also read the book and is able to attest to the testimonies that comes with it. Thank you for sharing. Do we have any other questions or comments? You're welcome. Thank you for listening. So the book is
lady-
sold in a lot of bookstores.
Yeah, the
I've
book
had
is
mine
readily
for a
available.
long time. Sir?
I said the book is readily available. There's no
Yes.
bookshop you won't see the book.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you don't see the book in a bookshop, it's not a bookshop. I can tell you that for free.
That's true. That's true.
And if you also check online, you can get maybe all these Amazon, all these books, online shops can easily.
Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's unmute now and let's all appreciate and celebrate our facilitator for tonight as we wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Thank you. Well delivered. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much
Thank you.
for nice presentation.
If you have a soft copy of the book as well, you can share to us. Thank you.
Okay.